Wow, what a race weekend that was. I had my doubts about whether Monaco could deliver any excitement on Sunday, but a wild, wet, dry race had me on the edge of my seat, and the incredible qualifying session made it an absolute classic, and by far the best Monaco race weekend I can remember. The only thing that would have topped it for many fans was Fernando Alonso securing a race win. As the rain approached, it looked like it could have been on, but Aston Martin made some interesting tactical decisions that cost him any chance of picking up win number 33. But did they actually cost him the win? Or was it never really on? Let's check it out. I want to start this video by saying I had zero expectations for this race weekend. There was a tiny part of me praying that Alonso managed to get pole and make a race of it, but that was it. The qualifying was wild though. Perez red flagging Q1 super early was an awful mistake and gave the rest of the drivers a shot at the front row. Hamilton pulling it out the bag on the last lap of Q1 and Q2 was very impressive, but Q3 is where things got turned up to 11. Esteban Ocon taking provisional pole by a tenth of a second with 3.5 minutes left was wild. Alpine gave the middle finger to their CEO Laurent Rossi, who had questioned his team's ability earlier this week. Clearly, it worked in motivating them to do better. With a minute left, Alonso went fastest in the first and second sector, and even with a really underwhelming final sector, managed to take provisional pole from Charles Leclerc by 0.02 of a second. Verstappen was then 0.2 of a second off Alonso's time after the first two sectors, and at that point in the lap, he could have been starting on the second row of the grid. But my god, that final sector was incredible. He must have grazed the wall on every single corner, but it didn't matter. He made up 0.3 of a second in sector 3 and took pole by 8.4 of a second. It was breathless. Jenson Button called it the best qualifying session he's ever seen, and I find it hard to disagree. I thought there was no way the race could top that, but it did. Aston Martin chose the hard to medium strategy for Fernando Alonso, and I think it was the right decision. Max was on a medium to hard to make sure he made it to turn 1 before Alonso. That worked out, and on the softer tyre he started to pull a lead. That was always going to happen. Aston Martin's plan took that into account. They planned that as the race went on, the track got more rubber on it and the surface cooled. This meant that when Alonso went to mediums, he should have been able to lap quicker, with less tyre wear than Max. It is what happened in Miami when Max was on a hard to medium strategy against his teammate Perez, who was on a medium to hard strategy. In Miami, Max had an incredible second half of the race, and Alonso was looking to replicate that. Unfortunately for Aston Martin, they never got to see if their plan would work. The rain started lightly on lap 51 and intensified slowly over the next few laps, but the fact it was initially largely over the section from Casino Square to the tunnel made decisions as to tyre choice difficult. By lap 54, with 24 to go, half of the track was wet and half dry, and Verstappen leading from Alonso, Mercedes George Russell, Alpine's Esteban Ocon, Ferrari's Carlos Sainz, Mercedes Lewis Hamilton, and Ferrari's Charles Leclerc. Verstappen had been hanging on with his fading medium tyres much longer than he wanted, as Red Bull waited for the rain, while Alonso behind him on hard tyres was more comfortable but 13 seconds adrift. Max won the race in this period. If he had to pit for new soft tyres and then pit for intermediates, he would have lost the race to Alonso, as the Spaniard could have gone longer on his hards and just pitted for intermediates with roughly 25 laps to go. Max's ability to nurse those mediums 55 laps and keep a gap to Alonso won him the race. But even with that excellent tyre management, did Aston Martin cost Alonso a first race win since 2013? Aston Martin chose lap 54 to pit Alonso, but they fitted medium, untreaded slick tyres rather than the treaded intermediates that Russell, Hamilton, Ocon and the other Alpine of Pierre Gasly all chose when they pitted 30 seconds or so later. Verstappen and the Ferrari drivers stayed out, but the intensifying rain led to the Dutchman hitting the wall at Portier and Sainz spinning at Mirabeau. Alonso said that when he pitted, most of the track was dry, apart from turns 5, 6 and 7, and the team believed the shower would be short. At the point Alonso pitted, he was over a pit stop ahead of George Russell behind him, so Aston Martin had the freedom to take a chance on the track drying up. Even if the rain came down harder, they could pit him again for intermediates without losing a position. Fernando had driven a pretty quick last 10-ish laps that had given the team the freedom to make that move. If the track had dried up instead of gotten wetter, the time he would have gained on Verstappen during the few laps he had fresher tyres on a slightly wet track could have been enough to get him ahead of the World Championship leader. It was the second strategy decision of the day that showed just how much Aston wanted to win. They took a chance that cost them nothing, but could have won them the race. After the race though, Mike Crack would explain that the call was not a gamble as it appeared. Rather, the radar had said that no rain was coming, and so they reacted accordingly. We thought it was only a short shower. Our radar was not very good because we did not expect any actually, Crack told F1 TV. And then it came much more than we were anticipating. So we had to come in because the hard tyres, they'd already a lot of laps on them, and they were starting to cool down, and then you really are just sliding. So we knew we had to come in. At this point, in here, it was not raining yet, or very small drizzle, and because also with the high ground temperature, it would dry up quickly again, so we decided to fit the mediums. As soon as Fernando had left, it started to come really heavy here, and we had to come in unfortunately. But it wasn't a gamble, it was just from the decision making and it was not correct. Had Alonso switched on to intermediates instead of mediums at his first stop, it looked as if he might have had a chance to make up enough time to pass Verstappen when the Red Bull driver pitted the next time around, although a quick analysis of the lap times suggested he probably would not have made it. The drivers on intermediate tyres were not significantly faster than Verstappen was for the 2 laps between Alonso pitting for mediums and Max pitting for intermediates. That didn't stop F1 Twitter from reacting with disdain to Aston Martin's choice to pit Alonso for mediums. There was a literal river around the Mirabeau section of the track, making this tweet very accurate. And I thought this tweet was very funny, portraying the reaction of some fans.
Richard, I'm going to make a suggestion. Don't come back here. Don't come back. Go away. Go to Tierra del Fuego, and even I'm going to hunt you down and kill you there as well.
In the post-race press conference, Alonso was asked if that extra pit stop cost him the chance to win. It turned out that was not the first time he'd heard this question, one which continued to confuse him, as 99% of the track was dry when he made that stop for medium tyres, so he did not understand why people were expecting him to have taken on intermediates at that time. I don't know, said Alonso when asked if that extra stop saw his victory chances slip away. I heard this question in the TV pen as well, which I was surprised a little bit. For me, it was very clear that the track on that lap we stopped was completely dry, apart from turns 7 and 8. So how would I put the inters? It was completely dry, 99% of the track, so I stopped for dries. The weather forecast, it was small shower, and the small quantity of rain as well, what we had as a team, and we had a lot of margin behind us to put the dries and, if necessary, the inter tyres. So maybe it was extra safe. I don't know, but that minute and a half that it took to go through turns 5, 6, 7 and 8 again, it changed completely. So the outlap on the dry tyres, it was very wet when I got to those corners, but the lap that we stopped, it was completely dry. Quizzed on whether he thought Verstappen was beatable if the track had stayed dry, Alonso put a stop to such a thought, saying we didn't have a chance in his opinion. I think we didn't have a chance, to be honest, he affirmed. I think we were brave on the strategy. It's not normal that you start on the first row of the grid and you choose the hard tyre, trying to do the opposite of the leaders. And that shows the commitment from the team and how aggressive everyone was in Aston Martin, trying to get the win. We knew that it was some downside that the strategy we could have ended up maybe P5, P6 or something like that, out of the podium. But this morning we discussed it and we said we've had a couple of podiums this year, so we go for all or nothing. We start on the hard tyre. Alonso went on to say that even if the track would have stayed dry all race, he wouldn't have had the pace to beat Max in Monaco. Aston Martin may have made some gambles over the weekend to try and get a race win, but when you have a driver of Alonso's quality, you can afford to take them because you know he's going to get the best possible outcome for you. So while the decision to pit for mediums was the wrong decision in the end, Aston Martin made the decision at the time because it was potentially a winning decision. Pitting for inters at their first stop would not have won them the race. At least going for mediums gave them a chance. It's just a shame the weather was eventually against them. What did you think of the Monaco Grand Prix? Should it still be cut from the calendar, or was this race exciting enough to make it deserve its spot? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and until next time, drive safe and bye for now.